Welcome, everyone, to the Spring 2023 College of Arts and Letters faculty meeting. I think some of our colleagues are still trickling in, but let's try to get started. So as we celebrate another academic year, I've asked Steve Fallon, who is retiring, to offer the invocation. Steve?
My prayers tend to be brief. Lord, bless this university and bless our work in the College of Arts and Letters. Help us as we strive to be committed teachers and mentors, teachers of and mentors for our students. Inspire us in our scholarship, research, and creative work. Encourage us to share our knowledge and our talents widely and generously with those less fortunate, with the poor and the marginalized around the world, throughout the nation, and in our South Bend and local communities. Lord, we ask all of this in your name. Amen.
Thanks, Steve. Before I forget, where is Kate Gary? Kate Gary, I'm sure all of you have heard, but she is being stolen from us by the provost's office because she is so incredibly fabulous. And so I just wanted to take a minute, since I know most of you in this room have worked with her, either through your departmental websites or your own personal research stories or whatever. If we could take a moment to recognize Kate Gary for all the amazing work she's done for Arts and Letters. We are going to miss you terribly, but we're very excited that Josh is moving up. So during this faculty meeting today, we will celebrate some faculty achievements and underscore much of what we do as faculty by presenting two brand new awards, one for research and one for graduate student mentoring. Jim Brockmole is the Associate Dean for Research and Strategic Initiatives and the Director of the Institute for Scholarship in the Liberal Arts, has spearheaded the development of these awards. This came out of one of those times when, we spend time as our internal team in the college thinking about okay, what can we do to make the college even better? And Jim came up with this idea out of one of those conversations of, we recognize teaching, in the fall with our Sheedy Award, but why don't we recognize research and graduate mentoring, since those are two of the other, very important things that we do and value. And so I'm really, really grateful to him for coming up with these awards. And so with that, I'm going to call on him to present the awards.
There are a few psychologists in the room, I guess. All right, so welcome. Each year, as Dean Mastillo said, since 1970, the College of Arts and Letters has recognized one of its most outstanding teachers with the Sheedy Award. And while classroom teaching remains a cornerstone against which the university's mission is set, our aspirations have grown and broadened to include internationally impactful scholarship, and with it, outstanding training and care of graduate students. To recognize faculty with exemplary records of achievement, scholarly achievement in graduate mentorship, this year the college created these two new awards, the Arts and Letters Research Achievement Award and the Arts and Letters Graduate Mentorship Award. And today we're going to publicly acknowledge and celebrate the inaugural recipients of these two awards. We're going to begin with the Research Achievement Award. This award is presented to a faculty member who has demonstrated outstanding and significant scholarly achievement. The recipient must have a strong and sustained record of scholarly accomplishment accompanied by outstanding disciplinary impact, innovation, leadership in their field, and engagement with Notre Dame's research and educational mission. And this year's winner perfectly fits this bill. He's a prolific and influential scholar working to discover the means by which family relationships and community contexts affect children's development between early childhood and later adolescence. Following decades of basic research, he and his students have developed and are evaluating programs designed to improve family functioning, the quality of interparental and parent-child relationships, the children's well-being when exposed to adversities such as marital conflict and political violence. Supported by some $40 million in grant funding over his career, his program of research has to date resulted in 366 publications, including 13 books, 58 chapters, and 279 journal articles. Together, his body of work has collected over 50,000 citations. So colleagues, please join me in congratulating Mark Cummings, the William J. Shaw Center for Children and Families Professor of Psychology, for this achievement. We've invited Mark to share some short reflections on his research program and its impact on children and families, and so I'd now like to invite him to come up to the stage.
Thanks, Jim. In thinking about how I might talk about my work here and reflect on it, the work really has evolved in a series of interrelated stages, one leading to the next. So, okay. First of all, I want to acknowledge a lot of this has been made possible by University of Notre Dame and the great support that the college and university and the department have provided me over the years. And I also appreciate the emphasis on excellence and quality and doing good at Notre Dame, which has made a big difference. And this has resulted in a series of several phases of research I'll describe, one leading to the other. The first phase was that when I came to Notre Dame, there was substantial work to suggest that family-wide functioning beyond the mother-child relationship, which is certainly very important, but other aspects of family were important. But there's limitations in the literature at that point, and a big question was, how and why does family affect children? What are the processes underlie the impact on children? So that was the next big phase of research, which hadn't really begun yet. And reviewers were asking me more and more to say, like, okay, this is a nice empirical article, but what's your theory? What are the processes that account for the effects? So, sort of forced into this by colleagues nationally reviewing my work, I developed a theory for family functioning, how it affected children, called emotional security theory. It's a theoretical model for the impact on children of family environments. Now, the next step needed to be to do research to validate these process models. As I'm sure many of you know from your work in social science classes, in order to really establish process models and do longitudinal research, you need to have external funding. And I'd been endeavoring to get funding for some years before I came to Notre Dame, major funding without much success. But when I got here, in part due to the strong institutional support for my work, I received 2 major NIH grants in a very short period of time, like about 2 months, and that supported longitudinal studies that allowed me to test theories about processes, identify processes that affected child development in families. And this work then could identify the impact of multiple aspects of family on children, how and why they affect children, which included marital functioning, sibling relationships, fathering, which is a much neglected topic at that point, the impact of fathers and families, and generally family-wide functioning, in addition to the very important role of mother-child relationships and how they affected child well-being. So these grants then allowed me to proceed with that work. But another major direction I wanted to pursue was, after I got here, I was invited to be a member of the Kroc Institute of Peace Studies, and I noticed that most all the work had to do with political matters, impact of politics at the level of political violence, which is very important, but there wasn't much accounting for the impact of these environments of political violence on children and families, or in communities. So I applied for some grants, helped by the Kroc Institute, Scott Appleby, to do a longitudinal study in Northern Ireland of how political violence in Northern Ireland affected community functioning, family functioning, and child development, and testing emotional security theory. And this work was very supportive of these models, which led to my next endeavor, which was to take this research on how, empirical research on how families affect children and the processes by which they affect children, into intervention programs. To use this research to inform better intervention and better cost-effective, brief interventions to help families and children. It's called translational research, which means you translate research findings into program. You don't just think about what might be good, you have a research basis for what might be good. So at this point, then I got applied for funding to do research on intervention programs in community families in the US, including community families, which all families have potential problems with conflict, interparental relationships, all can benefit. The whole idea of these programs is something that's very cost effective, brief, and something families like doing. Not too much talking, a lot of information, the information all based on research, to help them handle everyday problems better. Also extending to some at-risk families. One particular is families with children with intellectual developmental disabilities, such as autism, which have a lot of natural stresses, which create challenges for families. And this work was then funded by a foundation, WT Grant Foundation, Ministry for Children and Families, and then also NIH support. So that's phase 3. Phase 4 then was to take this basic direction applied to US families, children, in international context. In one context, Laura Millergraf and I were particularly interested in looking at was Palestine. We originally tried to do the research actually in Israel and Palestine for reasons you might guess. Things weren't happening too well between the two groups, so we had to pick. And the Palestinians needed more help. In terms of Israelis had a lot of good programs already. We thought we could add something to it, but there's a great need in Palestine. So we developed, over a number of years, preliminary work and pilot work, an intervention program for families and children in Palestine to help them cope with the political conflict. And we now have a major grant from NIH to do that work, and it's ongoing. A new project I want to mention in the same similar context is developing an intervention to help children and families in Nigeria with one of my graduate students, Ade. And that's the early phase, but that's along the same lines of interventions to help families and children in high stress areas of political violence and conflict. Also, I have new direction to intervention. This is another phase then, is to extend this basic direction to help families and children of different types of challenges. For example, post-divorce separation contexts, where conflict actually is a major issue, post-divorce, as well as prior to divorce and child adjustment and family functioning. So I have a study working with a colleague out of Arizona State, newly funded, and funded projects in, it's funded by the Swiss National Foundation in Europe, and also national study in Norway to help families and children coping with separation and divorce. These are my colleagues on here that are mentioned. I've also pursued many research collaborations throughout the world to extend this work in other countries. I've done work and published work now in Italy, China, Croatia, Spain, Chile, Wales, Norway, Germany, Switzerland, Ireland, Israel, Palestine, and USA. In each case, I need to form collaborations with local people, local scholars, local community groups. You always have to work with the local groups. It's really important to contextualize your approach and adapt it to the culture. And I've also, as much as possible, included Notre Dame undergraduates, graduate students, postdocs, and also junior and tenured faculty in these projects as they had interest. So there's a wide expanse of people involved in these projects that are extending this work. When I say process-oriented studies, this is research throughout the world and how and why does family affect children? What are the mechanisms, what are the processes, moderators, mediators, this extension of this work there in those contexts. The next phase is ongoing. One particularly interesting question is, how does community violence affect children? We found in Northern Ireland community violence was a major factor in child adjustment. It affected family functioning, child adjustment, children's sense of security about the community and the family. But we wanted to go beyond sectarian violence, which is what goes on in Northern Ireland, to broader issues of violence, including gang violence, police as sources of security and insecurity, and also general community violence and family adjustment. So we got a new project going on. We've submitted to NIH for a grant to look at community violence in these new areas that have never been looked at before empirically, and how these factors affect child adjustment and how they affect children's emotional security. Paul Boxer of Rutgers is the PI, and I'm a co-I on this project. That's another new direction. I've also been interested over the years to work with my colleagues in psychology and work on major projects as a co-I and helping them with developing grant proposals and getting funding. And right now, there's funding. Laura Milligraf has a study I'm co-I on, intervening with children of parents in prenatal period they're exposed to violence, which is a big problem for families when there's violence between parents before birth, child. And Laura's heading that up. I'm a co-I. I've also worked with Kristen Valentino on projects on maltreating families, how to intervene with maltreating families to help them function better. 2 NIH grants there. And also Julie Braungart-Rieker, who's not here now. She's now a chair at Colorado State, but she and I worked in this project. It's actually the case that in the first few years of life, the baby's life, there's the highest conflict in families. The greatest need for helping with conflict process intervention is when parents have babies, the first few years. So we have an intervention here, which is having some success, also funded by NIH and NICHD, that I've worked with her on that. So these are some the colleagues of mine I've worked with developing proposals that are funded and ongoing. So these are the basic overview. I promised Jim wouldn't take more than 15 minutes. I'm actually under, just kind of surprising. I never know. As a professor, I could certainly ramble on for another 2 hours. But I just want to close by thanking Notre Dame for support at all levels for my work over the years. I look forward to additional phases of research beyond these 7 in the years ahead and have some ongoing. And I want to close with saying, go Irish. And this year's the year.
Okay, so on behalf of the College of Arts and Letters, I would like to warmly recognize you for this achievement. You were recognized by your colleagues. You were nominated by your colleagues. We are really, really grateful to have you at Notre Dame. So I recognize you with this plaque for your achievement and with this monetary award.
Oh,
thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it.
And we have one more before the excitement is all over. I'm going to bring Jim Brockmull back up here again to introduce our award winner for the Graduate Student Mentoring Award.
An outstanding research university is synonymous with a university that excels in graduate student training. Graduate student research not only pushes and expands contemporary human knowledge, it also provides students with opportunities to learn the skills they need to become the next generation of researchers, innovators, thought leaders, and equally importantly, effective mentors to the generation that follows them. The mentorship we provide students today has very real consequences for the future of universities and our society. The Arts and Letters Graduate Mentorship Award recognizes a faculty member who has demonstrated outstanding scholarly mentorship of and professional care for graduate students. The recipient must have a strong and sustained record of extensive graduate mentorship and an extraordinary commitment to developing students as scholars, teachers, and departmental citizens. This year's winner is universally regarded by her faculty colleagues and students as a brilliant and effective teacher and mentor. She has supervised 28 doctoral dissertations, which, if you do the math, adds up to more than 150 person years of mentorship. These dissertations covered an impressive range of topics, and her students have made clear their deep appreciation for all that she has done for them. She is a mentor with unflinchingly high standards and a sharp precision of mind who consistently provides direct, candid, and clarifying advice. She is also a mentor who unwaveringly offers students her patience, support, encouragement, kindness, generosity, and loyalty, especially in times of need or suffering. Her former students continue to seek her advice and guidance as they proceed with their own publishing careers, negotiate life at their new institutions, and move into leading roles in the discipline. Colleagues, please join me now in congratulating Jean Porter, the John A. O'Brien Professor of Theology, for this achievement. And we are also pleased that Jean has agreed to share some short reflections on her approach to graduate mentorship.
I think the key word there is short, and I will try to do that. But I want to begin by thanking Dean Mastillo and the College of Arts and Letters for bestowing this very great honor on me. And I'm very appreciative because I very much value the good opinion of my colleagues. I also want to say a special word of thanks to my department chairman, Tim Matavino, and especially to my colleague Joseph Warrico, the former director of graduate studies, who were instrumental in nominating me and preparing my nomination for the college. And thanks to all of you for taking the time to come here and to participate in this award ceremony. It really is good to be here. You know, like most of you, like most of our colleagues in the college, I teach at every level. Undergraduate, beginning and intermediate graduate students, and doctoral students. And each level of teaching has its unique rewards, and I really would be hard-pressed to say if I enjoy one more than another. But I will say that teaching and working with doctoral students has one very particular reward that I want to focus on, and that is the joy of watching someone make that transition from a really bright student to a scholar. And if you work closely with doctoral students, I think you probably know what I mean. By the time they start a dissertation, our students, and our students are really, really good, you know, and they know what they're doing more or less with respect to the mechanics of scholarship. They know how to use sources, they know how to build arguments, they know generally what's going to fly and what isn't going to fly, generally, not always. But they haven't quite made that transition to a certain kind of independence of thought or judgment. They haven't really established a place for themselves as what I think of sometimes as the community of learning that we all participate in. And as they're working on their dissertations, somehow that transition happens. Sometimes it happens quickly. I have had the experience of reading a chapter by a student and thinking, oh my, and then I read the next chapter, I read the revision of the chapter and my jaw just drops because the person has completely changed. The intellect is operating on a whole different level. Usually the change is not that dramatic. It takes time, but it happens. And what I want to say to you is, you know, people ask me about my philosophy of mentorship and so forth, and I have to really humbly say I don't really have one because I don't know how to make that change happen. I really don't think any person can bring that kind of transformation about. I don't think the student, him or herself, can do it by an exercise of will. It really is something that happens. But what I feel like I can do and what I feel my responsibility as a director is I can facilitate it. I can help a student to understand what he or she is trying to say and to say it a little better. I can help the student clear away obstacles, both internally in the development of the project and also, frankly, external obstacles, usually in the form of conversations which begin, yes, I know this would be a wonderful conference, but, you know, you have to go finish your dissertation. A lot of those conversations. Or, yes, I know this is a really fascinating topic and it would make about 10 dissertations, but you have to pick one. I've had that conversation a lot, too. So, you know, I feel as a director I can facilitate, I can encourage. Sometimes I need to help a student to sharpen an argument or to improve use of sources or something of that sort. Although, as I say, most of the students we have are already pretty good at that kind of thing by the time they start the process. But really, I believe that the most important thing that I can do as a mentor for most students most of the time is to encourage them. And, that might seem to you counterintuitive because I think we have this image of graduate students as, sort of egotistical and, overconfident and so on. And that isn't my experience at all. I mean, occasionally, yes, you do. You get a student like that. But in my experience, most students are not confident enough. They don't yet know how to tell the difference, how to make the distinctions between something that's just crazy or marginal or not really worth pursuing on the one hand, and something that is genuinely original and worthwhile and insightful and worth developing on the other. And I will say in all honesty, I trust myself generally to make those judgments. I think that's something I can do. And I help my students to do the same thing, or at least that's my aim. I try to help my students to see what it is they're saying that's original and worthwhile, and then I try to give them the confidence and the sort of independence of judgment that they need to go forward and to claim their insights. To claim that argument or that facet of reality or that insight that other people have not seen, and that might be controversial and that might generate pushback. And I try to help them to understand how it is that they can make an argument in support of that insight, and how it is that they can open up a field and they can bring others into their point of view, and they can help people to transform the field. Some of my students really are transforming the fields they work in, and so I know that can happen. But even when it doesn't happen in a kind of obvious way, I think it always happens at some level when one is successful in working with a doctoral student. We help them to be independent citizens in a community of scholarship that existed long before any of us was on the scene, and that will go on long after we are gone. And to me, that is one of the greatest privileges I can imagine, and one of the great joys of my academic life. That's beautifully symbolized for me in the ceremony of hooding. Because when I hood a student, what I'm really saying is, you're my student, and in a way, you'll always be my student, because I always want to be there for my former students. But in another way, you're my peer. And you're my peer because you have made that transition. You are capable of independent thought. You do have something to say that no one else has said or has said in quite the same way. And you have your own part to play, your own students to encounter, your own research to do, your own life to live as an academic life. I cannot say strongly enough how much it means to me to be able to participate in that moment, or what a gift my students have given to me in enabling me to do so. And so I think I'll just close with a thank you. A few of my former students actually are here, but I would speak to all of them and I would say the same thing. Thank you, and may you continue to carry on a way of life and a tradition that is really why we're all here, and what we hope to foster. And thank you all for your attention, and that's about all I have to say. Thank you. Oh, you have to give it to me. Sorry.
Okay, that choked me up too. On behalf of the College of Arts and Letters, I would like to recognize you for the Graduate Student Mentorship Award, for the first inaugural Graduate Student Mentorship Award. So I recognize you with this plaque, with this monetary award, and with much gratitude for all you have done for our graduate students. Thank you, Jean, and congratulations.
Thank you, Sarah.
So now with those 2 awards out of the way, I thought I would launch into an update on the college's strategic plan and how it fits into the university's strategic framework, because it's only 4 o'clock. We have plenty of time. Just kidding. I do want to say that these 2 new awards, we have the Sheedy Teaching Award. Now we have this new Research Achievement Award and Graduate Student Mentoring Award that are nameless. And so if anybody out there would like to endow these awards, please come see me or Ellen during the cocktail hour. But beyond that, thank you all for being here. The semester end is very close upon us all. Please know of my gratitude for all the work that you do for the college and for the university, and for the students' gratitude for all the work that you do for them. God blessings to you for the summer months. The bar and the food await us, so thank you very much for being here. And congratulations on another semester. See you in the fall.